weirdos, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca, and this video is actually going to get a warning. I know I don't really do that on my videos because we all kind of know what this is, but this video was really disturbing for me to research, so I'm afraid it might be disturbing for you to listen to. So keep that in mind as you watch this. Some of the stuff is going to be disturbing. There are a lot of crime scene photos for this case. I'm not going to include all of them because some of them involve children, but you're more than welcome to do a little research on your own, and you can find them on Google. This case actually made me really mad. I really dislike Dennis Rader, the BTK, who we are talking about today. I dislike him so much that I'm not even going to give him an intro. I'm not going to give him a teaser. He doesn't deserve it. So we're just going to jump right into this story. It's going to be a long one, and I want to get it out of the way and out of my life. Dennis Rader was born in Pittsburgh, Kansas to William and Dorothea Rader, March 9th, 1945. He was the oldest of 4 children. When Dennis was a little bit older, they moved to Wichita, where the family would stay in the same home until 2005 when he was arrested. Dennis was an unremarkable, kind of dumb, child with no personality. He wasn't interested in music. He had no sense of humor. He had no friends. He was a loner. And this carried on really his whole life. And this kind of invisible thing that he had going for him allowed him to commit these crimes for so long without getting caught because no one even really knew that he existed. The weirdest thing about his childhood was that he tortured cats and dogs. He would hang them for sexual gratification and watch them die. And at a very early age, he admits to fantasizing about torturing and killing women. But that was really it. There was no abuse in his background. There was no sexual trauma. He had a pretty average childhood if you looked at it from the outside. But on the inside, he was dark and evil from a very early age. After graduating from high school, he worked for a few years before going to college. College was a little bit away from home, so he lived at school and then would come home and work at a supermarket on the weekends. He tried to join a frat to become more social, but that didn't really work. And the whole time he was in college, he was trolling neighborhoods. He was stalking women and looking for someone to kidnap. He would stalk these women. He would fantasize about torturing them. He was breaking into homes and stealing little knickknacks. But at this point, he has not attacked or hurt anyone. At 21, he joins the Air Force and is stationed in Japan, where he becomes sexually active. He exclusively has sex with prostitutes because he is too awkward to have sex with anyone else. And he tries very hard to convince these women to let him tie them up, but none of them do. He continues his trolling habits while in the military, looking for women to fantasize about and breaking into homes. He is honorably released from the military in 1970, and he serves 2 years in the reserves. And not even a year after returning back to Wichita, on March 22nd, 1971, Dennis marries a fellow Lutheran and a former classmate, Paula Dietz. Between 72 and 73, Dennis bounces from job to job. He has a hard time holding one down. And in 73, he is let go from Cessna airplanes. And this is when he sinks into a depression, and he has a lot of time on his hands, and he sinks really far into this dark fantasy world that he has. Now, his wife continued to work at a VA hospital on the other side of town, and she really didn't like to drive in the ice and snow. So during the winter, Dennis would take her to and from work. And while she was at work, he would drive around to schools and neighborhoods and find women to fantasize about. Still, all the while, breaking into homes and stealing little knickknacks. In 74, the Otero family moves into a house that is on the corner of the street on the route from the Rader home to the VA hospital where Paula works. Now, Rader has a fascination with Hispanic women. He is really attracted to their dark, shiny hair. And when he sees Julie, 34, and Josephine, 11, outside one day, he decides that they are going to be his first attack. Now, he stalks this family for a couple of days, getting an idea of their schedule, and he knows that it's kind of a large family. There's a husband, there's a couple of kids, there's a really aggressive dog, and he needs to make sure that the timing is perfect. And January 15th at 8 o'clock in the morning, he decides that that's the best time. He cuts the phone lines to the house and he breaks in through a back door. And to his surprise, Joe, 38, and Joey, 9, were home, as well as Julie and Josephine. This kind of throws a kink into the work, but he works on the fly, and at gunpoint, he forces the family to put the aggressive dog in the backyard and then forces the whole family upstairs. He tells them that he is an escaped convict and a wanted man, and he is trying to get from California to New York, and all he wants is food, money, and he's going to steal their car, but he has to tie them up to make sure that they don't call police. So they follow instructions and they allow him to tie up the family in hopes that he will leave everyone alone. Unfortunately, he does the exact opposite and he kills everyone. He starts with the father. He puts a plastic bag over his head and ties a ligature around his neck. He strangles the mother, Julie, and he strangles Josephine as well. And he goes on and he strangles the boy. Now, strangling someone takes a lot of work. Once you strangle someone and they pass out, they're not dead. After a couple of minutes, they're going to regain consciousness and they'll actually be fine. You have to strangle them for several minutes after they pass out. Well, Dennis didn't know this, and while he was bouncing from person to person, Joe tore a hole in the bag. So Dennis placed a t-shirt over his head, then a bag over his head, and taped the whole thing around his neck, and Joe passed away. While he was doing that, the ladies started to wake up, so he went back and he successfully strangled Julie, and he repeated what he had done to Joe on Joey, the 9-year-old. He placed a t-shirt over his head, then a bag, then a ligature. Then he went and got a chair and he sat and he watched while the 9-year-old suffocated to death. He said he really enjoyed watching the 9-year-old squirm on the ground. After Joey was dead, he took Josephine down to the basement at gunpoint, tied her to a pole that was down there, then hung her from a sewage pipe that was going along the ceiling. She was undressed from the waist down. She was wearing only her panties on her bottom half, and he masturbated onto her while she strangled to death. This is why I hate Dennis Rader. This is why I hate this story. This is why I'm ready for it to be over, and this is why this story got a warning. After Josephine was dead, he cleaned up a little bit. He stole a radio, he stole Joe's watch, and he threw the car keys of the family's vehicle up onto the roof of the house and walked home. Later, all of the bodies were discovered by the 3 surviving children when they returned home from school. Charlie, 15, Daniel, 14, and Carmen, 13. No one ever suspected Dennis. April of 74, just a few months after the Otero murders, Dennis set his sights on another woman, Catherine. He had been stalking her for some time, and while she was out, he cut her phone line, broke into the house through a back bedroom window, and hid in a closet for her to get home. He really enjoyed waiting in the home and kind of stalking the family from inside. It made him feel like the boss. Well, when Catherine came home, her brother Kevin, who was 19, was with her. This was not on the plan for Dennis, but he thought on the fly and he forced Kevin at gunpoint to tie up his sister. Then Dennis took Kevin into a back bedroom, tied him up, and tried to strangle him as well. Kevin fought like hell though, and Dennis was getting really mad, so he switched his plan around and he shot Kevin in the face. But Kevin didn't die. He kept fighting, viciously fighting Dennis off. So Dennis shot him a second time in the head. Now Kevin was unconscious. He was bleeding profusely from 2 gunshot wounds to the face. Dennis was sure he was just going to die any moment now, so he went back into the bedroom to take care of Catherine. Catherine fought like hell too. She did not let him tie her up. She wasn't going to let him strangle her, so he again had to switch his plan and he stabbed her several times in the torso. It was at this point that Kevin woke up from being shot 2 times in the face and took off running to go get help. This scared the crap out of Dennis, and Dennis took off on foot and ran away. Unfortunately, Catherine died later at the hospital, but Kevin survived. He's got some scars and some damage from being shot in the friggin' head, but he is still alive to this day. In October of 74, a reporter at the Wichita newspaper received a phone call from Dennis saying that there was a letter for him in a book at the library. The reporter did not go get that note. He told police about it, and police went and got that note. The note basically said, the people that you have in custody for the Otero murders are lying. I did it by myself. The letter went on to describe the Otero murders, the crime scene, the condition of the bodies, the position of the bodies, and he basically went on to say that he was a monster and he wouldn't stop and that he wanted to be called the BTK. We all know how I feel about criminals who name them for themselves. It's so lame. If you name yourself, you're stupid and lame, and I hate you. In 74, Rader went on to find steady job working for ADT Security, where he would stay working there for the next 14 years. In 75, his first child, Brian, was born, and there was a lot going on with his new job, with the family, with the baby, and he kind of went on a hiatus a little bit from killing. And between 75 and 76, there were no reported murders linked to him, and he says that he didn't kill anyone during that time frame. However, in March 17th of 77, he decided it was time to come off hiatus. He had met a woman in a bar named Cheryl who liked to party a lot. He found her really interesting, and he decided that she was going to be his next hit. She lived in a condo with a roommate, and he was going to break in and attack both of them. But when he showed up at the house to do that, both of the women were not there. Rader decided that it wasn't worth it, and he just went home. Them not being there that night saved their lives. However, after that failed attempt, he was driving around a neighborhood and he saw a small boy, 5 years old, riding his bike down the street. He stopped the boy, talked to him for a little bit, and showed the little boy a picture of his family and said, "Have you seen these people? I'm looking for them." The little boy said no. He got back on his bike and he rode home. Dennis followed the little boy home, went up and knocked on the door, and the 5-year-old answered. Now, he told the 5-year-old that he was a detective and he needed to talk to his family, so he let him into the house. As soon as he was in the house, he closed the blind, he turned off the TV, and he kind of started to usher the children into a back bathroom. This was when Shirley, the mom, came out in her bathrobe and was like, "What the hell is going on?" Dennis pulled a gun on her and said, "I'm going to tie you up and have my way with you. We're going to put these kids in the back bedroom." So they ushered the kids into the bathroom. They locked them in there with some toys and some blankets. Now, Shirley was really scared. She threw up. She was homesick at the time. He allowed her to clean herself up, gave her a glass of water, let her smoke a cigarette, then tied her up and strangled her to death. While he was doing this, the phone rang. This scared him, and he left, leaving the kids locked in the bathroom until their dad got home. To discover his children locked in the bathroom and his wife strangled to death in the bedroom. The kids never stopped screaming for 1 second while Rader was killing their mom. December of 77, Rader took a large interest in a woman named Nancy Fox, and he decided that she was his next project. That was what he called the people that he was killing. He called them projects, hacking them the hit, and all of them had little project names. Nancy's project was Operation Fox Hunt. On December 8th of 77, Rader decided that Operation Fox Hunt was a go. He cut her phone line, and he broke into her house through the back bedroom window and hid until she got home. Now, they believe that the attack happened in the kitchen, and he forced her at gunpoint to the back bedroom where he tied her up. Now, he says that Nancy was not really scared and was kind of matter of fact about it all. She's like, "All right, let's just get this over with. Can I go to the bathroom first? Can I have a smoke?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's fine. Go to the bathroom, but come out naked." So she went to the bathroom. She came out undressed. He allowed her to have a cigarette. Then he said that he was going to rape her, but he could only do it if she was tied up. He couldn't rape her if she was free, and she was like, "Fine, whatever, just get it over with." So he tied her up and immediately started to strangle her. Just before she passed out, he leaned forward, he whispered in her ear, "I'm the BTK." And she went nuts. She started fighting really hard. He really liked that, and that's when he cinched down on the belt again, tied it off, and masturbated on her while she died. I hate him. The following morning, Dennis Rader called 911 to report his own crime, and the recording of his voice was played on the news over and over again for weeks. Neither his co-workers nor his family recognized his voice.
Dispatcher? Yes, you will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing. Nancy Fox. I'm sorry, sir, I can't understand you. What is the address? 843 South Pershing. That is correct.
In 78, Rader sent a sarcastic poem called Shirley Locks to the Wichita newspaper. The newspaper didn't immediately attribute it to him, and they actually didn't even read it for several days. However, he sent another way more terrifying letter a couple of days later, and they took notice of it. The letter kind of forced the police's hands, and they had to admit to the public that there was a serial killer on the loose. A whole generation of women would grow up checking their phone lines every time they came home to make sure that the phone was still alive. June of 78, Paula gave birth to their second and final child, a daughter named Carrie. Now, Carrie would later go on to release a book. In fact, it was just released of January of this year, and it's called A Serial Killer's Daughter: My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming. The book talks about her life with Dennis Rader before the murders, after his arrest, and kind of what her life has been like during all of this. The link to her book is going to be in the description box below if that is something that you want to check out. April of 79, Dennis broke into an elderly woman's house, 63-year-old Anna Williams, who was a recent widow, and he waited for her in a back bedroom. However, that night she stayed out way later than she intended to with some friends, and Dennis got bored waiting for her to come home. He stole a couple of her things and then left. Her staying out that night saved her life. June of that same year, Dennis sent her a package. It was a letter, a couple of things that he had stolen from her house, and then a drawing with a description of what he had planned to do to her. He said that he was very disappointed that she didn't come home that day. He sent a similar package to a news media outlet in town as well. Not shockingly enough, Anna was terrified and she moved far, far away from Wichita. Dennis loved all of the attention that he was getting during the 70s, but he was getting a little more afraid that he was going to get caught. So he kind of retired, I guess, and we don't hear from him again in the media until 2004. However, unfortunately, he didn't stop killing during that time. During that time, he became more active in his church. He was actually eventually promoted to president of his congregation. He was involved in his children's Cub Scout group, and he was a volunteer police officer. In 85, Rader was jonesing for a kill, and he set his sight on a widow that lived in his neighborhood. Marion was 53 and recently widowed, and Dennis and his wife would go on like nightly walks, and they would often walk by her while she was gardening and wave to her. And then on the weekend of April 27, Dennis decided that this was the perfect time to kill her, so he faked having a headache to leave a Boy Scout camping trip to go back into town to finish the job. He pretended he had a headache and he drove to a local convenience store that was in town. He bought a beer, put some in his mouth, swished it around, spit it out, poured some of it on his clothes, then he called a taxi and pretended to be drunk. He told the taxi to take him to Park City Park so that he could walk it off a little bit before he went home. This park had a hedge line on the edge of it that lined up with the widow's backyard. He hopped her fence, cut her phone line, and broke into her home through a bedroom window and hid in a closet. Now, when the widow came home, she had a male guest with her that stayed until 1 o'clock in the morning. Then she went to bed. Dennis stayed in her closet waiting for her to fall asleep, and once she had fallen asleep, he jumped out and attacked her. He would strangle the 100-pound woman with her bare hands, then put her body in the back of her trunk, drive her to his church, drag the body into the basement, and pose her and take pictures with her and of her in the basement. Then put her body back in the trunk, drive her to the outside of town, dump her body on the side of the road, and then go back to the Cub Scout camping trip like nothing had happened and no one ever suspected him. Then in September of 86, he had been fantasizing about a woman named Vicky, 28. She was a mother of 2, and he decided that she was his next project. Sometime around 10 a.m. on the 16th of September, he dressed up as a phone repairman and knocked on her door, said there was something wrong with her phone. She invited him in. He cut her phone line, tied her up, and strangled her to death. She fought like hell. She even scratched him, but he used some of her pantyhose to strangle her to death. And while she was dying, he took pictures of her dying and masturbated on her. Then he stole her car and drove away. While he was leaving the neighborhood, he passed her husband coming home from work. The husband recognized the car, but didn't recognize the driver and rushed home to find his 2-year-old son sitting on the ground unhurt and his wife strangled to death in the bedroom. However, Vicky wasn't actually dead. She had survived the attack, but died a few hours later in the hospital. Her husband was actually a suspect for years until Dennis was arrested. In '88, he was fired from ADT for not meeting his numbers. Thank God, this whole time, people were terrified of the BTK breaking into their house and killing them. And so they were hiring ADT to install security systems in their house. And who was installing those security systems but the BTK? That blows my fucking mind. And I can cuss. None of this stuff is getting monetized anyway, so it doesn't matter. Then he got a job for the US Census in the 80s and walked door to door asking personal questions about families. He started using that job to pick out targets in other towns. And he had projects all over the place because of the census job. Then in '95, Dennis snuck away from another camping trip with his son and their Boy Scout troop to kill 62-year-old Dolores. He broke into her house, strangled her, and then he drew her in her final moments. Then he took her body, put it in the back of her car, drove her to the side of the road and dumped her body. But he came back later to move her to a separate location. At this more secluded location, he would pose with the body, take pictures. Then he dressed up in some of her clothes, wore a mask that was painted to look like a lady's face, and then buried himself in the grave that was meant for Dolores before, leaving. He also took pictures of himself, of course, and buried in Dolores's grave. I just can't even get over this fucking dude. And then went back to the Boy Scout camp. Nobody knew anything. He was never a suspect. He took a lot of really screwed up self-portraits of himself. These you can definitely find online. If you look up Dennis Rader self-portraits, you will find him wearing the clothes of his victims and reenacting or staging their death scene and taking pictures of it. I hate this person. A few months later, he got a job as a dog catcher and a code enforcer, and he really kind of set his sights on a woman in town. This woman was living with a man, and she had a dog, and he was giving her tickets for everything. It was ridiculous. And he said if that guy moved out, he would stop giving her tickets. And the final straw was when he confiscated her daughter's dog and had it euthanized before anyone could come claim the dog. That was it for her. She moved out of city and hasn't been heard from since. She's still alive, but she never came back. Then fast all the way forward to 2004, the 30th anniversary of the Otero murders. The newspaper in Wichita ran an article about the crimes, and then an author, Robert Beatty, was going to release a book talking about the crimes, and this pissed Dennis off. He was mad that someone else was going to get the glory for his crimes. So he started sending letters again. In total, he sent 11 packages to police and to the news station. These packages would contain letters, they would contain pictures, they would contain items from the crime scenes. He liked to design Barbie dolls to look like his victims. He was sending those in. It was all completely insane. In 11 letters. They were coming in rapid fire too. Then one day he really fucked up, and this is what got him caught. He sent in a floppy disk with pictures and a letter on it. They were able to track that floppy disk back to Dennis's church, where he was on the website as being the president of. They went there to his house to check it out, and he had a car in his driveway that had been seen on surveillance cameras dropping off one of the previous 11 packages, and they knew that was it. They subpoenaed his daughter's DNA from the doctors, were able to link him to the semen found at the previous crime scenes. Boom, they got him. February 25th, 2005, the BTK, Dennis Rader, was arrested and taken to jail. He was sentenced on August 18th to 175 years in jail. That was the max sentence he could get. Now, there's been a lot of drama surrounding him and his trial. Someone was trying to buy his house, but they were saying that the only way they would continue to buy the house is if the money went to his wife and his children, but the victims of his crimes said that they deserved the money, and he backed out of the sale. Eventually, the city decided that the house needed to disappear, and it was demolished. The victim sued Dennis Rader for like $10 million, knowing that he could never pay that money back. But what that ensured is that he could never profit from his crimes. There's been a ton of books and news articles and TV shows written about Dennis Rader. Hell, I have a book. I have the Dennis Rader book. This is the best one that I could find. I had thoroughly planned on, I got this book with a complete plan of reading word for word all of the letters that he sent. But that would have made this video like 4.5 hours long. So just know the letters are in this book. You can buy it at Barnes & Noble. It's like 17 bucks. I'm going to read it. I might read it live on one of my social medias too. We'll see. Anyway, so he was prevented from profiting from his crimes, and he still sits in jail to this day. No one from his family, not even his daughter who wrote the book about him, has ever visited him in jail. In fact, from the day he was arrested, she never went to see him. She has written a couple of letters throughout the years, but that's kind of the extent of it. And that is the rage-inducing story of Dennis Rader. I'm so glad that this story is over. I hated doing this research. I hated filming it. I hated getting pretty for it. I hated put on makeup. I hate him. He makes me so mad. I think it's important, though, that we continue to tell these stories because the victim's life was cut short. It was stolen from them by this asshat, Dennis Rader. And so if we allow the crime and we allow them to just kind of slip into obscurity, and Dennis Rader gets to have books written about them and TV shows, and he gets to get every couple of years, he gets popular again, that's not fucking fair. It's not fair. I don't think that we should ever forget him or what he did to people because he doesn't get the ease of people forgetting. I want everyone to remember that what he did and that he's a garbage person. I want everyone to remember what all these people did and that they are garbage people. Can you tell that I am upset? I hate this case so much. I'm glad it's over. I mean, it's not really over because I'm still going to read that book and I'm just going to get re-mad again. So we'll see how that all goes. I think what makes me the maddest about this is that he just tied them up and then like jacked off onto them. I think that is like a level of disrespect that I don't often, and I see a lot of disrespect for the victims in these crimes, but that is just a level of disrespect. Like, you're not even worth raping. You're just you're just a rag for me to finish on while you die. Oh my God, it makes me so mad. Okay, it's over. It's fine. Calm down. Let's end this video so I can go eat some ice cream. Alright guys, that was the video of Dennis Rader. It made me very mad, as you can tell. I'm glad it's over. I'm going to read that book and then I will never talk about him again because he's a garbage human being. Let me know in the comments what you think. I don't even want to say what you liked, what you didn't like. Just let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know that you stopped by. I am, again, sorry for the level of disturbingness in this video, but I said I was going to do it. I did it. It's done. We can all move on with our lives. Like, comment, subscribe, do all of those YouTube things so you don't miss the next Murder Monday. All of my merch and all of my stuff is in my Linktree link in the description box below. In addition to some additional links to see and read some additional information, a link for this book, the book that his daughter wrote, and some links to some photos and stuff. Not all the photos, like I said, I'm not including anything in this video picture-wise about the kids. So that's on you. I hope you guys have the best day. None of us are saints. I love you so much. Have a great day. I need a drink after this one.